Hey there, we're continuing to building up our task application and testing all the components of it. As usual, start by typing the command ng-test to see our test run and pass. We have 3 tests by now, and when you run ng-test, another Chrome window will open up where you can see your application running and you can see your test. So far we have the test for in task form component that our input should have the value we typed into, and we're testing that our new tasks are added to the local storage as we expected. The problem is when we press add, the task name stays in the input, and this is not so good because it should be reset actually. And this is a good opportunity to learn about some asynchronous changes in the DOM, something you have to wait for. Something you have to wait for before you can test it. Let's actually see this in action and you'll see what I'm talking about. The first part, let's open up the task from component.spec.ts. We will write here our new test. As usual, we'll start out with it method. We will write what we expect, and we're expecting input should be reset after pressing submit. Submit, how do you spell it? Yeah, now we're passing an async callback here. Okay, most of the stuff will be the same. We can copy and paste this. We're rendering our task form component. We can copy and paste this. We're gonna need our task name. We can copy and paste this. We're going to type it in our input. And we can copy and paste this because we're gonna click on the submit button. All of the other stuff we don't need in this particular test. What we do need is our task input, and that's gonna be from task from component.html. This is our form, and this is where we write the name, data test ID, new task. So let's actually write our expectation. I'll tell you right away this won't work, but we will get there gradually and see why this doesn't work and what we can do for it to work. So let's say we're doing our usual. So component get by test ID, and our test ID comes from task from component HTML. We defined it as new task, so we're passing it here. And now we're saying value. This is a red again, probably if it doesn't exist on type HTML element, because by default its type is HTML element. But we know that we are getting input, so we can say explicitly HTML input element, and now you have value on it. Let's say to be empty. So we're saving now our test, and you can see that we have indeed a failed test. Yet our karma, task number 1 to be empty string. So this did not reset. First of all, we don't have the functionality for this. What we do here, we're passing the task name from task form component HTML. Let's not do that actually. Let's do this Angular way with ng model. So what we do is we bind this property task name to the property in our class. That would be the same name. What do we call it here? Task name. So that's task name. It's a string, and it doesn't accept now nothing. We just say this task name, and after we do all of that, what we can say is that this task name should be empty string. Now we're saving this. You would think this would work, but it doesn't. But you can see that it did work. Task number 1 is no longer in our input. All of the actions have been done. Submit was clicked by our task. Input was reset, but our test still failed. It says task number 1 is expected to be empty string, but it's not empty string, it's task number 1. Why does that happen? Okay, what you can do here is that this all happen right away, one after the other. So component types on this, next it gets a click by submit button, and now it gets the value right away. But the Angular DOM, the Angular application still hasn't finished its re-render. So it still has task number 1. It all happens very fast in milliseconds, so you don't really notice it as a human. But with computers, you can see there is a mismatch. First you check it to be empty, and then it updates this value to be empty. So at the time of checking the value, it's not empty yet. So what we will do now here is declare a new variable. Let's say new task input. And now we're going to use an asynchronous function, and we're going to await it, because before moving further and checking the value, first we need to make sure that we finished waiting for this element and this element is ready. So the way we do this, we use await again, and the method is called waitForElement. So we can auto import it from testing library Angular. What we pass here is a callback that will return as the element we need, and that element is this component get by test ID new task. Now that this is done, you can actually make all of the same you did before. New task input as HTML input as HTML input element value to be empty. Let's save this. Okay, so I'm not sure what happened, but I ran Ninja test again, and now all of our test pad input should be reset after pressing submit. And this is a new way to wait for some element to change before you can test some values against that element. So this is some new piece of functionality from Angular testing library. It's actually built on top of DOM testing library, and I hope you will find it useful. This is it for now. You can find lesson example code examples on the GitHub, and we will continue building up our application in the further videos and writing tests for it.